It's that time of the year. The Formula One season is finally starting, and this season kicks off a 10-year partnership between Formula One and LVMH. This deal is valued at 100 million euros, which is roughly 110 million US dollars at the time of filming this video. And this also means that over the stretch of 10 years, this is a $1 billion deal. Louis Vuitton Moet NSC, as the name suggests, mostly is associated with Louis Vuitton, the women's bags, but as the name also suggests, it also is in the spirits business and it owns many other brands, for example, the cosmetics retailer Sephora, the jewelry brand Tiffany's, and also the watch brand Tag Heuer. LVMH is run by the Arnault family, and I'm sure this name rings a bell because the founder Bernard Arnault is frequently being named the richest person in the world. At the time of filming this video, he was ranking at the top of the Forbes ranking of the richest people in the world. And in this video, I would like to discuss why a luxury giant like LVMH decided to do this deal and invest in Formula One, and also what this means for the sports. Just before I start, a bit of housekeeping here. This is a non-sponsored video and I'm just sharing my personal opinion and my research here. This deal was announced in October 2024, and at first, yes, I understand when people say, why would LVMH invest in Formula One? As I said before, most people associate Louis Vuitton with LVMH. They forget how big this conglomerate actually is, but Louis Vuitton is one of their biggest and most famous brands, I would say. And actually it makes a lot of sense, not only from the luxury perspective, but even from the fashion perspective. And I'm going to give you a few examples in a bit. And let's start with the two most obvious examples in their product portfolio. When we think of Formula One, what comes to mind? It's usually the podium when the race winners get their trophies and then they get the big bottles of champagne to celebrate that podium. And up until recently, we saw a big brand underneath the podium and also on the labels of the champagne. This was Ferrari. And as I said before, the name already suggests it, Louis Vuitton Moet NSC. I would not be surprised if now at the podium to celebrate we see Moet Chandon. So this was the first, probably most obvious example. The second thing that comes to my mind when I think of Formula One overall, after the podium, it's the start when the traffic lights go on, and also before that we see this famous clock that finally it's time for the start. And up until recently the main sponsor for this was Rolex, and I already mentioned before LVMH owns Tag Heuer, so I would not be surprised if this year we see a clock with Tag Heuer on it. I keep mentioning LVMH is a luxury brand, and I would say to a certain degree from a business perspective and a marketing perspective, also Formula One can be considered a luxury brand. Yes, of course, it's first and foremost the motorsport, but the allure that they created around the sports, also this aspirational dimension, is definitely also something luxury. First of all, it's very capital intensive to get into the sports. Maybe you have seen the movie Rush about Niki Lauda and James Hunt, when Niki Lauda goes to a bank in Vienna to get money to finance his career. So we know about this. It's not really a sport that a lot of people can afford. So it's definitely an exclusive sport. Some people call it elitist, but from that perspective, already the barrier to entry is like to a luxury brand. Not everybody can afford it. And furthermore, when we think about Formula One, most people don't only think about the motorsports, they think about the whole thing around it. Some people say the circus of Formula One, because it is about the famous races. Think about Monaco, the super yachts, the supermodels, the parties, the celebrities in the pit lane. Unfortunately, this very often overshadows the sports, that the focus is more on these celebrities and the parties than on the sports and the technical dimension and the race drivers themselves. I'm a bit sad about this, but this is just how the world works, how the game is played. But this also shows us that Formula One definitely also established itself as a luxury brand. And what we can also learn from this is that Formula One has become a cultural phenomenon as well. Now, why did LVMH choose Formula One for such a long and big deal? First of all, LVMH is no stranger to sports. When we think of 2024, LVMH was a big partner of the Paris Olympic Games, but already before that, they were involved, or they have been involved in sailing, for example, which again works really well with their luxury brand, because also sailing is kind of an exclusive sport. And when we look at luxury brands from a business perspective, from the branding and marketing dimension, a luxury brand must do more than just sell products, because they need to create a myth to make you want to buy, to aspire to be part of their brand. And Louis Vuitton, Moet and Hennessy does that really well, otherwise they wouldn't be that big. And we can see that because they are involved not only in fashion, they are also involved in entertainment, sports and culture. And the last one is also very important, because Louis Vuitton owns their own art foundation, the Fondation Louis Vuitton. And this means that luxury brands try to be part of as many dimensions of our daily life, so that we constantly are reminded of the brands and don't forget to aspire to be part of them or buy the products. Now let's look on the other side, Formula One. What does this mean? That a luxury giant like LVMH chose to collaborate with Formula One. It's basically a big seal of approval, because it shows how important Formula One has become. It has become a cultural phenomenon, as I said before, which is already far beyond this mere driving experience, the technical dimension. From the early onsets after World War II in 1946, where the first formal races began, until today, the development of the sports has been incredible. And it started out as a male-dominated sport. Unfortunately, it's still very male-dominated, but things are changing. And it was also kind of a European sport, we could say. Formula One always had a close relationship with America too, but I would say the American market is a bit different. They preferred sports like NASCAR, for example, over Formula One. But in recent years, I would say in the last 10-15 years, we see this big move that the sports became more popular also in other geographies. So we saw the big move to the Middle East. How many races are now in the Middle East? We also have a big fan base in Asia, not only in Japan, which traditionally had this long link also because of the Suzuka race. We can definitely see that also America is becoming more and more important. This season we have 3 races in America, and this global phenomenon, this push over the past years for Formula One, is due to a very smart social media strategy, also an involvement in esports, then of course also the partnership with brands, but also because of a certain show on Netflix. Drive to Survive, as I said before, it's a non-sponsored video, but it is a fact that this show heavily influenced the popularity of the sport. Even I noticed people who had no idea about Formula One before Drive to Survive started, suddenly started talking about it. And according to a study in 2022, 30% of Formula One fans said that the reason why they started to get interested in that sport was because of Drive to Survive. So we see a lot of things have happened. The popularity of the sport has moved beyond the core fans, the traditional group of Formula One aficionados. And then because of that development, it becomes more and more attractive for brand partners, because we can say Formula One has definitely now reached a level where from the advertising standpoint they are as valuable as other sports like soccer in Europe, for example, or maybe football in America. And of course Louis Vuitton, Moet and Hennessy wants to capitalize on this, and where are the possibilities here for LVMH to increase their brand awareness? So I already mentioned before, Moet Chandon will probably be the main champagne. And then also we will see the trophy trunks. And you have probably noticed it already. There has been a trophy trunk since 2021 for the Monaco Grand Prix. And what Louis Vuitton is going to do is they produce a trophy trunk now for every single race in their signature monogram canvas. And then they basically make it unique for every race, for every country, because they say the colors will change and also there will be elements from local culture that influence it. And in the front we have a V in the checkered flag. The V stands for victory. So this is another thing that we are going to see. And these trophy trunks are nothing exclusive to Formula One. We have seen those before, for example, for tennis, for the Australian Open, and also for the FIFA World Cup. And coming back to that whole luxury brand argument, I said before, to a certain degree, Formula One is also a luxury brand. And when we look into it, we think of Louis Vuitton and women's bags, so luxury bags. And I would say what is the bags for many women is the cars for many men. A lot of them aspire a Ferrari, for example. Also, a lot of women aspire those cars. So this is one thing that actually works really well together. And then also Louis Vuitton itself is actually no stranger to the automobile. And for this, I need to take you back a bit further, because maybe you have seen my other video about the Louis Vuitton monogram canvas, how it was developed, that it actually had a very strong link to the travel industry. And at first they supplied trunks for traveling on the train. And then, of course, when the automobile became more and more accessible, more and more popular, also traveling changed. And there was a new type of trip coming up, because now you had more flexibility. You could just pack a few things and travel for a weekend. And this is how the weekender bags came about. And when we talk about Louis Vuitton, they also moved from just producing trunks to bags. This is a development that many of these maletiers, these trunk companies, then underwent. And in the case of Louis Vuitton, the founder's grandson, Gaston Louis Vuitton, then developed the Keep All bag, which is still in their product portfolio. It's a weekender bag where you can just pack the necessary things for a weekend. You can put it in your car and just go. So there is this strong link between bags and cars, even though at first sight there might not be any link at all anymore, because so much time has passed. And then in general, the car and its development heavily influenced also fashion, especially in the first half of the 20th century, because there were unisex coats, cloaks, goggles, gloves that you needed. Only later, when the automobile then was fully closed, was there no need for these goggles anymore. But from the beginning, the development of the car and also fashion went hand in hand. So when we look at fashion history or history overall, this link between Formula One and a fashion brand or a luxury brand actually makes a lot of sense. The fashion on the Formula One paddock also underwent a development, because in the beginning it was functional. You had the core fans and it was a motorsport, so it's quite dirty. You have to work on the car. Then over time, I would say it became a bit more preppy, depending on the drivers and also the fans. Maybe polo shirts were also acceptable, even though it comes from another sport. And now we see that a lot of drivers themselves also have embraced fashion for themselves. And probably the most famous example is Sir Lewis Hamilton, when he arrives in the interesting outfits on the race course. Very often he also gets comments about this. Some people say, like, why would a race driver wear stuff like this? But I find it very interesting, because it shows that also men can have fun with fashion. I think he and his stylist, Eric McNeil, actually do a very good job to show the whole spectrum of fashion while still being very genuine. And Lewis Hamilton has established himself with this also outside of Formula One. He is now a very respected personality also in the fashion industry. This year he is a co-chair at the Met Gala in May in New York. And also he is actually quite closely linked already to LVMH, because he has been a brand ambassador for Dior. And last year in 2024, he released a capsule collection together with the then menswear creative director Kim Jones. There have been rumors if he may partner with Bulgari, but these rumors so far have not been confirmed. Lewis Hamilton in the past has also worked with Valentino, then also with IWC, the watch brand that is owned by the LVMH competitor Richemont. This deal ended in December 2024 because now that Hamilton moved over to Scuderia Ferrari, he will partner with Richard Mille, another Swiss watch brand, a luxury brand, who is also the official watch sponsor of the Scuderia Ferrari. So we already see there are already a lot of links, and I would also like to remind you of something maybe you remember, the heavy discussions between Hamilton and the FIA if he can wear his beloved jewelry while he was driving. This was, I think, 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. So we also see that jewelry can be a big topic. So maybe LVMH can capitalize on this with its jewelry brands. So the relationship between Lewis Hamilton and fashion is probably the most obvious one, but also other drivers are heavily involved already in fashion and luxury. This is no surprise. Let's look at Max Verstappen, for example. So he is now a brand ambassador for Alpha Tauri. This is no surprise. Alpha Tauri is owned by Red Bull that also owns his team. So it makes sense for him to be seen in Alpha Tauri fashion. And previously he partnered with the Dutch denim brand G-Star Raw. Also makes sense because he is Dutch. And then there are also other drivers, for example, a lot of people are fans of Yuki Tsunoda's fashion style. Then another prominent example is, of course, Lando Norris from the McLaren team, because he is a partner of Richard Mille as well, the watch brand, and also Tumi, the suitcase company. So we see Tumi, and then when we think of suitcases, we can also think of LVMH because they own Rimowa. So maybe there might be also a link in the future. And one interesting partnership is also Charles Leclerc and APM Monaco. It's a Monaco-based jewelry brand, so it makes sense. He's also Monegasque. But at first, I associated APM Monaco with female jewelry. I also have rings, for example. I really like the jewelry. But I did not associate it with men. And then I saw that immediately when Charles Leclerc leaves the car and goes to the podium, while most drivers go for the watch, he also goes for the APM jewelry. So this is quite interesting also. And I already mentioned the watches. So when they leave the cars, the top three leave the cars, they walk over, they have this stand where you have, I think it's a water bottle or some liquid in there, then also their cap for all the sponsors, and the watch. This is one of the first things that they will put on, and I would not be surprised if we would see much more of Tag Heuer there as well. And also the brand Tag Heuer is no stranger to Formula One. Already in 1971, they became the official sponsor of the McLaren team. And since then, they had a close relationship with the team, but they also sponsored other teams and drivers. Some of their most famous brand ambassadors were probably Sebastian Vettel or Ayrton Senna. They also recently released a limited edition relating to Ayrton Senna. So this is definitely something that LVMH can capitalize on. Needless to say, they can't just barge in and say everybody now has to wear Tag Heuer watches, for example. This is not going to work because it depends on the teams and also the drivers. But I would not be surprised if we see more and more watches related to LVMH over time. And I would also like to look into the target audience more, because a lot of the examples that I now gave were probably more geared to the male viewers, but as we know, the attractiveness of Formula One has now also opened up, let's say, to women. More and more women are interested in motorsports, and there are also a lot of initiatives to make the sports more diverse overall. So to get not only more women, but also people with different backgrounds into the sports. And one initiative would be the F1 Academy, which is run by Liberty Media, the parent company of Formula One. It's headed by Susie Wolf, who was also herself a racing driver, and they are trying to get more women also into Formula One. And you can already see it. I've seen more and more female commentators. More women are also talking about Formula One. In the past, I was kind of like an outlier if I was interested in motorsports or in cars, and now more and more women get interested in it. And I can also back this up with numbers, and they're actually more impressive than I thought they would be, or higher than I thought that they would be, because the F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali said in 2022, 40% of all viewers of Formula One were women. I was also surprised. I thought it's less, and this was an increase compared to the previous year of about 8%. So from that perspective, when we now look at this partnership, LVMH and Formula One, it makes even more sense because on the one hand, LVMH has a lot of products that are also interesting for women, and maybe they now become more interested because they're interested in the motorsports, and also vice versa. Maybe Formula One can become more attractive for women because they come via the LVMH channel. So just looking at it from the business perspective, no matter what we think of LVMH, the founders, the brands, and also motorsports or Formula One in particular, from the business perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm curious how this 10-year-long deal will develop, because I think this is just step one. 10 years are quite a long time. And I'm very curious what you think about this deal between LVMH and Formula One. And I'm actually also curious about your view on Formula One. Are you also a fan of Formula One? What do you think about the sports and its development in recent years? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please help me by subscribing to my channel if you haven't done so already. You can also always hit that like button. It's very good feedback for us creators. And if you prefer to read more about fashion, you can also head over to my website, thepinklookbook.com. And if you like, you can also check out my fashion label, Pelagona. And now I talked a lot about this French luxury giant. If you want to learn more about LVMH, I have another very interesting video for you. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and see you in the next one.